Getting stricter with nutrition didn't make me better. I needed a new approach. I've been bodybuilding for 15 years now, 5 years as an amateur, coming up on 10 years as an IFBB pro. Let me tell you, along the way, I made some serious nutrition mistakes that didn't make me better, just made the process harder to gain muscle and lose fat. But that's not gonna be you. You won't be the John that bulks up to 230 having to diet off 50 pounds, or even the John Post show eating way beyond what his calorie needs are and just getting fat within 8 weeks. We're gonna talk about today some 5 main nutrition mistakes that I've made that you don't have to make to fast track you to gain muscle more efficiently and drop body fat without all the mistakes that I made. Clean eating obsession. This was me earlier in my bodybuilding days. You can see my video right here I made in 2016 being a pro.
White rice and chicken goes down really well for me. I usually add some pickles into this just for the sodium content.
What was that, John? You eat what? More chicken and rice and asparagus or green beans? It was all like chicken, rice, meat, rice, repeat. There wasn't a lot of variety there. Even in college, there was a time where I would bring this ground turkey sweet potato meal. I would eat it at 11 a.m. I remember it was right after one of my biology courses, and it would take me forever to eat. There was no sauce, no condiments, just plain. It was brutal. I would do it, absolutely could do it, and because the goal was, to be a bodybuilder, I was determined. But it didn't have to be that challenging. And it also created a diet that wasn't filling in my micronutrient needs. Macros are hit, but there wasn't a variety there. Another problem we see in bodybuilders is one that lack variety, also lack fiber typically, because we eat just a lot of rice. And we see improving your microbiome diversity could improve bodybuilding outcomes metabolically, and their gut is tied to so many areas like the brain, the thyroid, muscle, other organ systems. So just having variety in your diet is gonna make, for one, your diet more palatable, but also be able to improve you metabolically and stay healthier to create progress. So lesson, what do you do about it? Create a diet that has a rotation of a variety of whole foods, of protein, carbs, and fats. I typically try to pick 3 to 4 different options of each macro. So that means beef, chicken, fish, and then maybe some whey for your protein options. Carbohydrates, do rice, potato. You can do other fruits, do a variety of fruits, 5 different fruits. Get like a fruit medley bag, or even a veggie medley bag. That way you're able to get a variety of colors into your diet. Then what I like to do too is, like on a Saturday, go to the store and hit something different, some type of different protein source, different carbohydrate source to get some variety rotation in throughout your months of being a bodybuilder. Now the kicker here is don't go all the way to, if it fits your macros, I'm eating Pop-Tarts for my diet, because then you're lacking a lot of the fiber, which goes right back to the same issue. And we still want also foods that have those micronutrients. So keep this to whole food sources. Mistake number 2, no carbs before bed. I used to have just casein before bed. Remember when it was all about slow digesting protein before bedtime? Or it would be like egg whites and green beans. And from a fat loss phase, this was brutal. I would wake up, this was prepping for the New York Pro in 2018. I'd wake up multiple times a night, so hungry, waiting for the morning, because then I have to do fasted cardio, right? Then I would finally get to able to eat. But it was causing so much sleep disruption that fatigue was never dropping off. I was always under recovered, and it made prep extremely challenging. Eventually what I did was just shift some carbohydrate tonight, something that was fibrous, slower digesting, like some oats. The idea was that if you had carbs before bed, since you were sleeping, you're mainly using fat as a substrate, that you weren't going to be able to utilize those carbohydrates and they just store as fat. And what really matters in the day is your total calorie intake. Now, we should absolutely prioritize some carbohydrates around training, especially more so if you're in a state where you're more glycogen depleted like prep. Off season, it probably doesn't matter much. You have a lot of carbohydrate to spare, but prioritizing a little bit towards bedtime, if it helps you manage hunger and get better sleep, is going to skyrocket progress, because sleep is one of your best recovery tools. And I have so many people that are prepping with poor sleep that I see weight loss happens, but they just turn into these smaller versions of themselves. So having some carbs at night can do a lot for you. The only kicker around this that I would bring up is don't go so large in your carbohydrate meals. Some people do like their off-plan meals or large cheat meals before bed, and too large of a meal will disrupt sleep, keep you up at night, thermic effect of food, body heat rises up, you're sweating, night sweats. So don't go that far, but a little bit of carbohydrate before bed can absolutely help and not limit your progress at all. On the topic of carbs, my next mistake, carbs and fats aren't allowed to go together. This is all around the insulin hypothesis that spiking insulin, having dietary fat in your bloodstream at the same time, just immediately gets stored as fat. Again, it comes down to calories in a day. But in 2012, I was super into carb cycling. My training days were high carb, 0 fats, like only trace fats in the diet. And even the carb sources I was picking, the protein sources I was picking were extremely low fat. It made the diet so unpalatable just to have all of this volume of rice and chicken without anything creating moisture content. Then on my off days would be fats and protein, maybe just a little bit of carbohydrate. Again, same thing. beginning, you had more fats, it was more palatable, but man, I was so hungry during the day because carbohydrate were also so low. But it ended up creating just a lot of highs and lows. Even moving to prep in this type of diet was even harder because the off days were so low in calories that hunger was still higher, even though like protein and fats were there. And it also created just a challenge from a preparation standpoint, which some people that might not matter, but for others, to have your diet varying that much can be, versus just having something more middle of the road. And there was a study by Gole who actually challenged this. He did a disassociated diet, separating carbs and fats, versus a diet where they were just a balanced approach across with carbs and fats being combined for weight loss. The result, it didn't make a difference. It still came down to total calories. So the lesson here is for fat setup, bodybuilding diets typically will be lower in fat as carbohydrates are going to be our main fuel during training, and doing like 0.3 grams of fat per pound of body weight as a minimum is a great baseline to start with. As far as like programming carbs and fats of the day, more so an even spread can work out well. I typically still do put 40 to 50% of carbohydrates in that peri-workout period, and then just really base the rest of how I balance the diet based on someone's hunger and what they can tolerate around training. Some people can't eat a lot of food around training, so fats are going to naturally be lower with a lower carbohydrate volume, or potentially just more intra-workout carbohydrate in a drinkable form. Then later in the day, if someone's less active and not as hungry, well, we scale down food around then. Same with like an off day. If you're not as hungry on your off days because you're not training, well, that's just naturally why calories would be dropping down. But then I still have clients that you have the same diet every single day because for them it doesn't really matter, and it makes it a lot more easier for adherence, keeping a more even spread of the diet. Oh, and I need to hit this one question for guys that are enhanced using PEDs. They ask me like, if I use insulin, should I avoid fats? And the same thing applies here. Just because insulin's rising doesn't mean you're going to gain fat just because fats are in your diet. It still comes down to your total calorie intake. Usually if you're using insulin, it's because you have a higher carbohydrate amount that is being put in that place. But even if you weren't using insulin, your body's going to have to produce that insulin on its own with fats or not being present. But it comes down to still, just because insulin's up doesn't mean you automatically store the fats that you're eating. Mistake number 4, this one's still so prevalent, is the big protein eater. In 2015, I was gaining from like 200 to 225 pounds in my off season. I was eating 400 grams of protein per day. It was so excessive looking back. And that wasn't even counting trace protein. I was counting purely from meats and protein shakes, like direct protein sources. So it could have been like 500 grams of protein that I was eating. For one, from a bloating perspective and hunger perspective, made it hard to get all the calories in. Also, I wasn't like balling in money back then, so it was really expensive to eat that much protein. Then another point to it is like, well, it was really displacing my calories that could have been allocated towards carbohydrate and fueling training. And even the science to this point too is backing that going beyond 2 grams per kilogram of body weight of protein, you really see just only marginal differences. There's a paper by Raffaello 2025 that summarizes this really well. And there is some slight differences going up to like 3.2 gram per kilogram. It's like 1.4 gram per pound of body weight, but it's very, very small, and more so if you're challenging the retention of muscle. So someone that was in a calorie deficit, for example, that you might benefit from a little bit more protein. So what I do is just have a J3U kind of slider approach. So we start protein at like that 2.0 gram per kilogram body weight. Then we nudge that up all the way up to 3.2 gram per kilogram if you're dieting and you're struggling with hunger. Now we can nudge that back down if you're struggling with hunger, if you're in a calorie surplus, anyone that's experiencing bloating, or even if you're struggling with reflux, it takes a lot of stomach acid to digest protein. So one thing, just start shifting protein back down to that 2.0 gram per kilogram of body weight. And the only last thing to say, if you're like really high in body fat, it is more accurate to estimate off of fat-free mass. So you might go off an estimated potential fat-free mass, maybe even an ideal body weight as a calculator of what we used to do when I was working in the hospital, and use that as your estimate for your grams per pound of body weight. And mistake number 5, and we probably all struggled with this at some point, is mishandled cheat meals. So coming off show in 2015, I was gaining a lot of weight, but on the weekends, I would have this massive cheat meal. It was ridiculous. But you can see my photos here going from like contest lean to 8 weeks later, looking like I needed to already start another contest prep, but starting my off season. So just having this huge excursion in calories was way overshooting my total calorie surplus for the week. So it was really just a way to like manage calories, could have been done so much better. And there's been so much research that's come out around this. There's not a metabolic benefit to doing cheat meals. Even in the dieting process, having a cheat meal, you get a slight boost of a thermic effect of food, maybe a little bump in leptin acutely, but it goes right back down right when you're the next day onto your back in your calorie deficit. So the physiological benefits aren't really there. Even in the off season, sure, it gives a psychological break from just your monotonous day, but it doesn't have any physiological impact. So you need to reframe this as this is part of my lifestyle, that I can go out and enjoy a meal, but more so make it about the environment and people that you're around. And if it's some food that you really want that you normally can't have in bodybuilding, that's what Renee and I do at home. We'll make homemade pizzas or burgers at home that typically are way hard to find something that fits within your calorie surplus when you go out or you're just calorie maintenance or whatever you're doing. But then we have our go-to places that we know we can eat, enjoy food, and pick bodybuilding friendly options like fajitas or Greek food or going out to sushi. So we kind of have our go-to places that we'll pick for our dieting purposes. Don't make these same 5 mistakes that I did. Implement them in your bodybuilding process and you will vastly improve your enjoyability in dieting and building muscle and make more progress without suffering through it like I have. For more keys to success in staying lean in the off season, get my free guide down below. Which one of these mistakes are you guilty of right now? Drop it down in the comments below and let us know. And if you want to skip the trial and error and learn more from my experience, click the subscribe button and follow along for more.